October 1st, 2017. The final night of the Route 91 Harvest Festival. Thousands of country music fans packed shoulder to shoulder, singing, drinking, and swaying to the music under the neon glow of the Strip. For most, it was supposed to be the highlight of the weekend. For others, it would become a nightmare they'd never forget. Inside a suite on the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay Hotel, a man named Stephen Paddock was finalizing a plan he had been preparing for months. To everyone who knew him, he seemed ordinary, even boring. A retired accountant, an avid gambler, someone who spent long hours at casinos. No criminal record, no history of violence. But behind the bland exterior was a man stockpiling an arsenal large enough for a battlefield. Over several days, Paddock checked into his suite, carrying bag after bag. Valets wheeled them in without question. By the time he was done, there were over 20 rifles inside, along with thousands of rounds of ammunition. He had carefully selected the weapons, fitted some with bump stocks, attachments that allowed them to fire like fully automatic rifles. Each rifle was positioned on tripods scoped and pointed at the crowd below. He even set up surveillance cameras in the hallway to monitor police response. This was not improvisation, it was preparation. At 10:05 p.m., the concert reached its peak. Country star Jason Aldean was on stage, the crowd roaring with cheers. Then, without warning, the night shattered. The first burst of gunfire ripped through the music, a sound so alien that some thought it was fireworks. But seconds later, screams cut through the night as people began collapsing in the crowd. The music stopped. Panic spread like wildfire. From the 32nd floor, Paddock unleashed a relentless rain of bullets into the festival grounds. He fired in sweeping motions, his rounds ripping through the packed audience. Within seconds, the crowd turned into chaos. People scrambled for cover, dove under bleachers, or used their own bodies to shield loved ones. Witnesses later said it felt like being hunted from above, as if the sky itself was firing down at them. On the ground, the scene was hell. Survivors described the sound as never-ending, a buzzsaw of bullets, lasting over 10 minutes. The Strip, normally alive with neon and music, was drowned out by gunfire, screams, and sirens. Some people played dead, lying motionless in pools of blood, praying the gunfire would pass them by. Others dragged strangers who couldn't move, lifting bodies over fences with bare hands torn by wire. Police officers on duty at the festival immediately ran toward the sound, unsure of where the shots were coming from. Some thought there were multiple shooters on the ground. Others thought it was coming from helicopters. The sheer volume of fire made it feel impossible that one man could cause so much devastation. As the gunfire continued, officers and SWAT teams began racing up the Mandalay Bay Tower. Hotel guests cowered in their rooms as heavily armed officers swept hallways, unsure if ambushes awaited behind each door. Radios crackled with frantic voices. "We're pinned down." "Multiple casualties." "Shooter is still active." Officers on the 31st floor reported the sound was deafening, echoing through the walls above them. One SWAT member said it felt like the ceiling itself was vibrating with each burst. On the festival grounds, ordinary people became heroes. Strangers dragged the wounded to safety, ripped shirts to make tourniquets, carried bodies over fences. Pickup trucks became makeshift ambulances, rushing bleeding victims to hospitals. Amid the terror, countless acts of bravery unfolded in the shadows of violence. A husband shielded his wife with his own body and took the bullets meant for her. A young man drove back into the line of fire 3 times to pull strangers into his truck. Medics worked with flashlights, crawling on their knees, treating whoever they could. At 10:15 p.m., the gunfire stopped. In just 10 minutes, Paddock had fired more than 1,000 rounds into the crowd. 58 people lay dead. Hundreds more were injured, many fighting for their lives. Survivors crawled across asphalt slick with blood, desperate to escape. For many, the silence after the last shot was worse than the noise, a silence filled only by cries, sobs, and the groans of the wounded. Inside the Mandalay Bay, silence settled on the 32nd floor. SWAT prepared to breach the shooter's suite, bracing for a final firefight. They moved door to door, weapons raised, expecting a booby trap at any second. But when the door exploded open, they found Paddock already dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The man who had carried out the deadliest mass shooting in modern U.S. history had ended it himself, leaving behind no clear explanation. The aftermath left the nation in shock. More than 22,000 people had been trapped in the line of fire. 58 victims died that night, with 2 more succumbing later to their injuries, bringing the total to 60. Over 850 were wounded. In just 10 minutes, Las Vegas became the site of an American tragedy that dwarfed all others. Investigators pored over the crime scene, searching for answers. Why would a 64-year-old retiree with money, property, and no obvious enemies plan such a massacre? FBI analysts scoured his computers, his finances, his communications. They found evidence of planning, meticulous notes about bullet trajectories, weapon setups, and firing lines. But no manifesto. No political statement, no clear motive. Speculation exploded across the country. Was he radicalized? Was it a suicide mission born from despair? Or was it the ultimate expression of a man's obsession with control and destruction? Officials publicly admitted, they might never know, the only certainty was that one man had planned and executed an attack on a scale America had never imagined. The survivors carried scars that never faded. Many spoke about the haunting sound of automatic fire that echoed in their nightmares. Others remembered the silence that followed, a silence filled with bodies on the ground and the weight of knowing life had just been divided into before and after. Families who had traveled to Las Vegas for a weekend of music instead left with empty seats at dinner tables, names carved into memorials, and wounds that time could never erase. In hospitals across Nevada, doctors worked frantically through the night. Emergency rooms overflowed. Surgeons performed back-to-back operations, sometimes operating in hallways. Nurses later said the halls looked like war triage, with patients laid out side by side. Blood banks across the state ran dry, and lines of volunteers wrapped around blocks to donate. Las Vegas, a city known for entertainment, became a city of mourning and unity in the days that followed. The tragedy reshaped conversations about gun laws, security at public events, and the terrifying reality of how vulnerable crowds could be. Police departments nationwide reviewed their response tactics, ensuring SWAT teams could reach high-rise shooters faster. Event organizers invested in new barriers, surveillance, and escape plans. The use of bump stocks, the very device that allowed Paddock's rifles to fire at near-automatic speeds, became a subject of national debate and was eventually banned. But no change could erase the pain carved into that night. A woman who survived described running barefoot across glass and metal, hearing the screams of strangers behind her. Another recalled crouching under a bleacher, praying into her phone voicemail to say goodbye to her family. These stories became the permanent memory of that night. Intimate, haunting, unforgettable. Today, if you stand near the festival grounds, a memorial marks the names of the victims. Tourists still flood the Strip. Neon still glows across Las Vegas Boulevard. But those who were there on October 1st, 2017, remember more than the lights. They remember the bullets raining from the sky. They remember the chaos, the heroes, the heartbreak, and they remember the night when, for 10 minutes, Las Vegas wasn't a city of entertainment and glamour. It was a war zone.